Hey everyone, it's Professor Clark, and this lecture is an introduction to the Russian naming system. If you've ever read the classic Russian works like Anna Karenina or War and Peace, or if you've heard people complain about reading them, normally everyone bellyaches about all the Russian names. Well, now you're going to learn how to understand those Russian names, and you'll discover that it's not actually that hard at all. Har, har, har. No, it really is quite easy to get a grip of and understand at least the basics of. So let's start at the beginning. The Russian naming system has three names. So all Russians have three names, and the first name is called the imya. And the imya is your first or given name. And some examples would be Yelena or Helen for a woman, or Natalia or Natalie, also for a woman, or for a man, Viktor, which is Victor, or Anatoly, which is Anatol. And if you look at the ends here, and in Russian, as we'll learn in a bit, you should always be paying attention to the ends of the words. You will notice, if you look at the ends of these names, that all the women's names end in a or ya. So Yelena a, Natal ya. And all the men's names end in a consonant. So Viktor is a consonant, and Anatoly, that ikratkoya at the end, is a consonant. And so this is always the case for all full names. Like Yelena, Natalia, Viktor, and Anatoly are all the full version of the name, and they always follow this rule. However, all of these first names have an extensive system of nicknaming. And for the nicknames, both men's and women's nicknames will often end in a or ya. So for example, Yelena is often going to be shortened to Lena, and it ends in an a. Natalia is often going to become Natasha, which also ends in an a. And it's pretty common for the nickname to end in sha. So Maria becomes Masha, Natalia becomes Natasha, Pavel becomes Pasha, and so on and so forth. Viktor becomes Vitya. It's still a man's name, and it's still grammatically masculine, but now it ends in ya. Or Anatoly often becomes Tolya. Again, it's still a man's name. It's still grammatically masculine, but it ends in ya because it's a nickname. If you are natty with someone, you are almost always going to use their nickname. You will not call them Yelena or Natalia. You will call them Lena or Natasha if you are natty with them. The next name in the three-part naming system is the Orchestra, from the word отец, father. And in English, we call this a patronymic. And a patronymic is a name that is formed from the father's name. And specifically in Russian, it's formed from the imya. So we are familiar with this with Scandinavian and Viking traditions where we have Ericsson and names like that. Russian does exactly the same. And so we form the Orchestra by adding Ovna or Yevna to a woman's father's first name, or Ovich or Yevich to a man's father's first name. So if a woman's father is named Vladimir, her middle name, her Orchestra, will be Vladimirovna. Or if her father's name is Anatoly, her middle name, her Orchestra, will be Anatolyevna. If a man's father's name is Vladimir, his middle name, his Orchestra, will be Vladimirovich. Or if his father's name is Anatoly, his Orchestra will be Anatolyevich. And note that Russians do not have middle names the way we often do in English-speaking countries. There's no given middle name. You have no choice about what your middle name is going to be. It's always your Orchestra. And the formal form of address is someone's imya plus their Orchestra, and it's normally called imya Orchestra. If you are Using someone's imię отчества, you are always going to use вы when speaking to them. You may also need to use вы with some people you address by their nickname. So, for example, in a work or university setting, many people will go by their first name or their nickname, but you will still use вы with them if they are your professor or your superior at work. But if you want to be very formal and respectful to someone, you use their imię отчества and then you use вы when addressing them. And then finally, the third part of the three-part naming system is the Familia, which is their last or family name. And there are ethnic Russian last names, which always end in in for a man or ina for a woman, ov for a man or ova for a woman, ski or nli for a man, and skaya or naya for a woman. And these ethnic Russian names, as you just saw, indicate gender and number. So women's names are always going to end in a or ya, and men's names are going to end in a consonant, as you can see by looking at the examples. There are also plural forms of these ethnic Russian last names, which we will talk about later. However, there are many people in Russia who are not ethnic Russians and have some other kind of last name. Some very common ones are Ukrainian names, and those end in yenko or chuk. Georgian last names are also very common, and they normally end in ye or e. And then there are a lot of German last names, and they are going to end in consonants like Block or Stamm. And if you have this kind of name, if you have a last name that is not ethnically Russian, it doesn't end in, ov, ski, or nli, these names are not going to indicate gender or number, and they are just going to be the same for men and for women, and also if you have one person or multiple people. So that is our overview of the Russian naming system. I hope you can now read War and Peace or Crime and Punishment more easily, and you no longer have fear of reading Russian literature because now you understand how the names work.